Welcome to Cornell Keynotes, friends. Joining me in the studio today are Cheryl Stanley and Doug Miller, who are frequent and favorite guests of mine here at Cornell Keynotes. Thanks for joining me once again, friends.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you for having us.
Lovely to have you. We got a jam-packed conversation. So you both are senior lecturers at the Nolan School of Hotel Administration at Cornell. You teach hospitality, food and bev service, wine, beer appreciation, all the business and operational aspects of everything behind what I've just mentioned. Specifically, Cheryl, you're a go-to wine expert and author of multiple online certificate programs, including Wines of the World and then wines of a number of individual countries, maybe 8 or 9 or something like that, I believe.
Yes, and then also beverage management.
There you go. Perfect. And Douglas Miller, you teach hospitality and food and bev service. Also, you're the beer guru and faculty expert on Beer Essentials is the certificate program that you are author of. What else do you teach over at the Nolan School as it relates to beer and beverages?
Sure. So I also teach a food and wine pairing course. I teach that in the spring. And then I teach the iconic restaurant management class that's been taught in the school for over 50 years.
There you go. Again, lovely to have you in the studio. Viewers, we're going to be having a conversation here. There's going to be several URLs that'll be dropped in the chat throughout. Please put your questions in the chat because I know that we have a lot of people who are working in this space. We're as interested in your questions as the ones that we've devised together. So let's cut to it. We're talking about drinks menus, how to get them dialed. Turns out there's way more behind this than one might think about, certainly at first blush. When I wrote the copy for this, we had a concept kind of in mind. Then we started meeting about it, and it kept evolving. It kept going back to broader economic issues, workforce issues, which I think very much fit into the conversation today. So let's say you're a front of house manager, you're a bartender, you're the person responsible for making decisions, purchasing decisions, and otherwise at a bar. One theme that kept emerging, a through line in our conversation was concept. It always goes back to concept because I was asking you, what does the perfect drink menu look like? Let's talk a little bit about it. Doug, you are huge on concept. You talk about it constantly. Why is it so critical when we're thinking about getting our drinks menus dialed?
So part of it is how does the consumer perceive your program? You know, if your beverage program is not in line with your food menu, there'll be that disjointment. A lot about concept is how are you messaging your operation to the community at large? And how do they perceive you? And how do they know when they come to your place, what type of experience should they expect?
And Cheryl, how do you teach concept? Like when you think about how to build a wine menu or things along those lines?
Thinking about what products you're offering and how they, exactly as Doug said, kind of align with the operation. Because there's so much choice out there, you're making intelligent, smart choices for your business operation that reflect your business.
So let's illustrate concept in practice, right? So I have a Mexican cuisine restaurant, broadly speaking, right? Mexican cuisine. What's on my drinks menu?
So broadly speaking, you're probably going to have some tequila.
Sure.
You know, how much tequila you offer, that can tie in. Do you want to be known as the place for tequila in your market? Or do you want to just have a smattering of different styles? Are you going to have a mezcal? Mezcal is super hot right now. And where is that mezcal from? There are single origin mezcals that could really elevate your concept and create that experience for the guest. Mexican beers. You could even offer Mexican wine or even just general agave spirits, even coming from the United States if you're located in the U.S.
Mexican wine. One more time. What are you talking about?
Oh my gosh. Amazing wines coming. Primarily the wines that you can get in the United States are coming from Baja. And, we think about it, it's just an extension of California. Incredible Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Chenin Blanc, there's been a lot of international investment in the wine regions there, and I think it's really a region that everyone should be looking out for.
Perfect. So concept in mind as it relates to Mexican cuisine. All right, American farm to bistro, local food kind of thing. Doug, what would we do with that kind of drinks menu? So
if you say you're farm to market or farm to whatever restaurant, then that has to be reflected in your beverage program. You need to be able to offer your guests local breweries, distilleries, wineries, cider houses. There's now sake producers all over the United States. Be able to offer that same type of concept within your beverage program itself. What a lot of guests are looking for is how does everything integrate together and how can I get something unique and different that somebody else somebody else might not have. And that's why local's one thing to think about. Plus, also the other thing to think about is how do you keep the supporting of your industry itself? So by selling the beers or the wines from your local community, distilleries, maybe they are sending people to your restaurant. Maybe there's opportunity for collaboration, maybe collaboration brews or wine brand launches. So how do you start to create that ecosystem within your local community between the producers and then also the people that are selling the products?
That's really good advice. Goodwill is actually a pretty powerful currency when you're talking about kind of the local businesses. So I think our viewers probably kind of get what's going on here, but one more. Pizza oven, homemade pasta. Not old school Italian, but maybe a little newer. What would you put on your drinks menu?
So that's hard. To me, it would be an Italian-inspired wines, or not necessarily coming from Italy, but you know, outstanding Italian or grape varieties, grown throughout the world. And there you could even do some fun play on, it's an Italian grape variety, but it's coming from South Australia, a Nero d'Avola from South Australia.
Sure.
Wow. Okay. That's something to talk about.
Yeah.
And that could be actually drive that guest experience.
Doug, you were talking a little bit earlier about the relative sophistication of the newer buying public, right? Mm-hmm. The younger customers who are spending their money at restaurants. What's one of the critical things that's kind of important to them as it relates to a drinks menu? What do the younger generations want to see?
They want to see. They want to be able to experience something that they can't have at home. They are very knowledgeable because they'll go to websites, things of that nature. But then also, how do you create a program where you're providing them that great experience? That great experience be through the offerings, that great experience be how the drinks are made. How do you build that authenticity within your list itself? A lot of the younger consumers want authenticity, and the products that they're consuming share the same values that they carry.
I think we've all been involved in hospitality in some way or another, front and back of house, et cetera. And I think we all agree that it's critical to give your bartenders the flexibility of their space to flex their chops, be creative, do something interesting, bring something interesting to the work. It's absolutely critical that your bartender is able to do this. Now, any guidelines before we get to the point where you're letting your bartender kind of run wild and print up, here's the specials menu, and we've got 9 things on it. I don't know. How do you think about this when you're thinking operationally about how to keep things kind of in check as it relates to your drinks menu and creativity? That was a long question.
That is a long question, but yes, you want to empower your employees. That keeps them excited, and that is fantastic. But you also need to have limitations because you are running a business.
Yep.
And, yes, you can create that special drink, but if you fly by the seat, just kind of at whim cocktails, are they being costed out correctly? Is the guest price correct based off of the costs that you have with the operation? And you want to make sure that they're good too, right? What kind of steps did occurred before just putting the drink on the menu, right? Getting feedback from all of the team in order to make sure that the correct drink is put on the list.
I know you were eager to talk about costing, and I know we have a note here to talk about it later, but let's get into it right now. So how do you manage the cost of that 9 drink, menu? What are the ways you do it? Because I was asking about it. You're getting down to the ounce, you're getting down to the teaspoon, jigger, half jigger, etc., right?
You're getting down to the dash of bitters.
Tell me how you do it.
So you need to know approximately, for example, if you have a liter bottle of spirits that has, terms of the United States measurement, 33.8 fluid ounces. Mm-hmm. I always do 33. It's a whole number because you don't serve 0.8 ounce.
Yeah.
And with that, you know how many portions that you have per bottle, and you can scale up, scale down depending on your portion size. So if your neat pour or well pour is a 1 ounce, you know that you have 33 pours per bottle. This can also help control the business, right? And if you're not getting the yield per bottle, something's happening, and you need to make sure is an employee drinking on the job, or is there overpouring? And also using jiggers, using some sort of measured control is very important for a liability stance as well.
And consistency.
Yes.
Because I was going to add, that's the other thing is the consumer benefits, because it forces the bartenders to be able to build consistent drinks, which then presents the guest, regardless on which bartender it is and what day of the week it is, that guest must have the same consistent product every single time.
You know, we kind of feel it looming over this conversation, so let's talk about the myriad challenges that restaurants are dealing with right now. There are big economic things going on. Inflation, high prices, consumer weariness of the whole thing, less inclined to spend their money kind of outside. Let's talk big about some of the issues that restaurants are facing and how it relates to designing a drinks menu that you can make money and sustain your business with.
Well, alcohol consumption is down, but people are willing to spend more. So they're not drinking as much. They're much more conscious about how much they're consuming, but they're willing to spend more money.
So, and part of this, that sense of value. There are a lot of challenges, but then that's when, as a business operator, that's when you can be creative and fun, which is why maybe doing RTD or ready to drink canned cocktails, which decreases your labor situation. You don't need to carry every single whiskey or every single wine, scaling down your list so you still have a great offering to the consumer, but you don't have so many that creates supply chain issues or labor issues or things of that nature.
And Chris, you actually brought up about empowering your bartenders, having like a 1/3, 2/3 ready to drink cocktail to made in front of the guest cocktail could be a nice balance, because that way you're managing the labor associated with each drink.
Speaking of labor, so staffing since the Great Resignation, and even before then, frankly, still continues to be a challenge. Human resource issue. That's what a restaurant job is right now.
Yes.
Right? Human resource. Pay is kind of going up. The talent pool's going down. How do we deal with that as it relates to this? Because, we talked about some solutions, right?
I think
being open one last day and then, cross-training, et cetera.
But I think also part of it is making sure your employees are involved and included with the operation. Businesses where the employees feel valued, they are less challenged with labor. I mean, it still is a challenge, but they're less challenged with labor. And that includes maybe they are doing a special cocktail. Again, cost it out, recipe tests, things of that nature. But how do you get them feel that they're a value person within the operation itself? That will always help your labor.
Hey, I've got a cool question from Gregory, who checks in and says, could the panelists please comment on the shift of the spirits bar space to a pay-for-play model with menu listing fees, back bar placement fees, swipes, and other forms of direct monetary incentives that spirits brands use to promote their brands on premise? What are we talking about here?
Depends on the state.
Okay.
Some states, these things do happen. Some states, it is illegal. But I believe what they're referring to is certain brands, for you to be able to carry their product, you have to pay a fee, slot fee, to pick up some of the more upscale or more popular products. Some of these products are the ones that are being owned or advertised by celebrities, so the clientele wants them, so they charge a fee or premium for you to be able to pick up that product and sell it.
But the big challenge with that is if every single operation in your market is only carrying the same products, you don't have as much price flexibility or guest price flexibility, because what they're charging for a specific brand, you have to charge that same amount. You don't know necessarily how much the pay to play was, or what economic order quantity that operation purchased. And maybe you don't have as much carrying cost, or not carrying cost, but financial liquidity for you to be able to buy 10 cases. So your cost is higher, so you're not making the correct margin.
Right. And this is a specific market kind of concern.
Las Vegas.
Well, yeah.
And other markets, but a lot Las Vegas.
Okay.
And part of that reason is because they see it as a form of advertisement, because so many people from domestic and internationally go there. That's where they see it as almost form as an advertisement, so they can take the products back to their communities.
Got it. Okay, let's go back to those lean operational challenges kind of things, right? Cutting costs, building efficiencies, and so on. A big part of bartending, as it turns out, is about creatively building efficiencies into the processes. So what are some ways we might be able to do that? Cheryl?
Well, we kind of talked about ready-to-drink cocktails.
Yeah.
And think that's not just opening the can and pouring. You can spice it up, right? You could do a rinse of something else. There's also some great mixers out there that give you some flexibility where you could do an alcoholic product and a non-alcoholic product from the same mixer.
Let's distinguish, because it is critical. A ready-to-drink cocktail is not the same thing as a hard seltzer, where it's vodka plus seltzer plus lemon. You've got a couple examples here. What are these?
Correct. So I have a ready-to-drink cocktail that actually has Colorado bourbon in it, as well as Amaro.
Yeah.
And here they advertise, on ice. So that's great. But why not do like a fun rim of some sort of flavored sugar, creating, maybe doing some, as I mentioned, some sort of rinse, or even adding one more ingredient to kind of create a special drink. But the majority of it's already completed and mixed in the can.
I have to ask, is your integrity as a bartender sort of compromised if you crack one of these open and say, one Negroni coming up? What do you think?
Depends on the concept. Some concepts, ready-to-drink cocktails, are a challenge because the consumer is going for that experience to have that bartender handcraft that drink in front of them.
Yeah.
But for other places where you might not have the skilled labor, or maybe your clientele is indifferent about it, they might be excited that they could have more offerings with these new products. So it all depends on your market, and it all depends on your clientele.
Yeah. Bigger picture, cross-training kind of came up, right? Just as part of this general thing. Very smart to do. And with some of these efficiencies that we've just described, it makes some of the bartending a little bit easier, right? So let's say you're running with two on a Saturday night and one's sick. It's nice to have somebody else you can slot in to handle some of these other premixed drinks, RTDs, non-alcoholics, whatever.
So, and that's, you mentioned about pre-mixed booze drinks, depending on your location, depending on your state laws, pre-mixing a drink, which is not a new thing. This has been going on for decades, where you pre-mix the cocktails. So all you're doing is just serving it over ice, which helps efficiency. It helps with the knowledge base of the staff, so you can make it ahead of time. So that person might not be as knowledgeable on making drinks, but you've already made sure the recipe is in check for them to go ahead and finish that drink.
And it kind of goes back to, as well, the barrel-aged cocktails that were so popular, that, those were pre-batched cocktails, just aging in a barrel, and all you did is open up the spigot in order to pour it out. Exactly. And so it's just a different viewpoint, right?
Yeah.
That today it's that we're looking at.
So Doug, this sort of reminds me of the old days of the bartender, but there's an experiential thing that's associated with bartending that also sophisticated younger generations, Gen X and below or whatever, seem to be pretty interested in. What is that?
So what's interesting about the younger generations, they're situational in their mindset. So sometimes they want to go to that cool speakeasy cocktail bar where it takes 3-4 minutes to make the drink and the ice is hand chipped, and they're willing to pay for that great experience. Other times they just want something that's grab and go. They want something that's easy. They pour it over ice. Maybe they're with friends having pizza or something else. So this goes back to how we started off. It's really understanding your concept and really understand your clientele. I would have to say, the younger generations, they're not brand loyal. They're experience loyal. And they want to go for different experiences based off of the moods, their friends, and where they're located.
So this involves a good deal of training, right? Of your staff. You've got to have a system to do this kind of thing, right? Everybody has to know everything. Now, do you include bartenders, servers in conversations with liquor or wine purveyors, right? Are they there for the demos? Are they there for the tastings?
Well,
it's expensive to do that kind of thing, to staff those.
It's actually not.
Okay,
so
good.
what's for whoever is making those decisions?
Yeah.
They would have the initial meeting with the distributor or the supplier. And then once that product is brought in, that supplier or distributor could come back to the operation and give a training. So they supply the product. You don't have to open up that spirit or that bottle of wine. And if you do, you should charge it to marketing cost.
Yeah.
But it's a way where they are supplying the education, training everyone, giving those stories, so then the employees can bring it back and create those experiences.
And by providing educational experiences, the staff is less likely to leave, which also helps out your labor issue or your labor challenge.
Yeah, perfect. Cheryl, wine. We haven't talked too much about wine yet. What is, trends come and go, right? With the seasons, as the winds change sometimes. What's going on in wine? What are people interested in?
Sancerre.
What's the deal there?
Sancerre, Sauvignon Blanc from the Loire Valley, specifically from the AOC Sancerre, is on fire
And
this
retails
summer.
for what in a store?
Oh, well, now because of supply and demand, it's
Yes.
gone up, 38, 45
so it was
US
25
dollars.
plus back,
Yeah.
or 30 or whatever. Yeah.
But now, this is where knowledge of Sauvignon Blanc and areas in the Loire Valley that produce Sauvignon Blanc, you can find some amazing deals, such as Quincé, Menetou, Salon, or just a simple Val de Loire IGT or IGP wine that you can pour by the glass, you can make a good profit margin on, and it's a wonderful alternative to Sancerre because you're probably not going to be able to get it.
And you've added to the experiential bartender-customer relationship. You've educated your staff to then spring off of that Sancerre prompt,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
And make educate. So yeah, sort of summed up what you just said.
Yes.
But I think that's incredibly valuable, and it's really important for the experience. And if you can do that, you can apply this to, let's say, Barolo takes off or something like that.
Exactly.
It could be anything, Burgundies or whatever.
I mean, you can
apply this.
find other regions of the world that produce, within even say the same state
Yeah.
or the same part of the country that produce the same grape that are at a different price point, and making those very strategic purchases and selections for the list
Yeah.
will be much better down the line.
Right, and also say Sancerre's prices are elevated, saving you money. A little inside tip.
Because we make wine we make profit in beverages,
Yeah.
not in food.
Doug, have we reached peak beer? I feel like we have, but set me straight.
So sales are down, like all alcohol consumption. Sales are down in beer, but I would have to say it's more of the market maturing. There are more headwinds than there were 15, 20 years ago, but even 10 years ago, the growth of the beer industry was not sustainable. So what I have to say is the industry's matured, just like any other commodity, where you'll still have openings, there'll still be growth, not at the same pace as it was before. As of last year, there's more openings than closings. The press oftentimes celebrate the closing of breweries, but because it's an easy article to write. But I think the market's just maturing. I think there's still great opportunities. There's still great products out there. There's still great stories. I know somebody in Brooklyn, she's about to open up her brewery. And people say Brooklyn's a crowded market. She's an outstanding brewer, and she'll be quite successful.
Yeah, that always goes far. So when we think about our menu, have things changed? Generally speaking, are we still at peak IPA, or what are consumers into? Any trends there?
So lighters in, lagers are in.
Yeah.
Last semester when I taught my beer class, a lot of students like the simple flavors of lager. I think part of that goes into with all the crowded lives they live. They're looking for something that's simple and plain and straightforward. IPAs are still quite popular. Sours are quite popular. The area that is struggling, unfortunately, one of my favorite areas is English beers, porter stouts, and brown ales. But you still find great examples of that. And the barrel-aged porters and stouts are still doing very strong.
There's some dynamics within the wine industry, related to containers, shipment, things along those lines. There's another dynamic at play here where we're talking about building efficiencies and saving costs. What can we do? First of all, if you could explain some of the market challenges going on with glass
Certainly,
bottles, things like that.
Yes. I mean, we have the tariffs of 2020, which really impacted the cost of wine coming from certain countries. But then you also have the increase in costs and tariffs coming down from glass being produced in other countries. And so that is going to impact, right, the cost of every single bottle of wine. And Alternative packaging is really exciting. We've talked about kegs in the past, and wine in kegs is great. But as an operator, you need to have the correct keg system, right? In order to store the kegs and service the kegs.
More taps that are prone to dysfunction.
Right. And also, does it fit your concept? Not serving wine by a bottle. Is that correct? Like, is a carafe on the table for a bottle fit? With it. Right. But what is exciting is that you have high-end producers who are now launching bag-in-a-box wine. And people are probably going to say, what? Bag-in-the-box? Bag-in-the-box is cheap wine. No.
All right. What are we talking about?
So I went into a retail store in Maryland and I saw, wait a second, that is a producer from California making boxed wine that was selling for $114.
This is 4 bottles of wine in a
4 bottles
in a bag.
Because they knew that their consumer was buying multiple bottles anyway. So it makes sense from a sustainability point to do that. Now, that's great for home consumption. For restaurants, it will work, but you have to be very careful to make sure that there's no drinking on the job. It's not kind of going other ways, over pouring, because with a bottle, we can easily see that. With a bag-in-a-box, it's a little bit more challenging.
Oh, my gosh. Doug, back to you. I want to talk about hard seltzer again.
Yes.
Where are we at with that? There was a time where it exploded. It was in every grocery store, every restaurant. It was made available to everyone instantly. Where are we at now?
The market has cooled off.
How much?
It is quite significantly. There's multiple reasons why. One of the big reasons why is consumers are everything moves that much quicker. We've had throughout history some type of beverage. At one point in time, wine coolers in the 80s was a hot thing. Now nobody drinks wine coolers. For a while, it was root beer flavored beer. Now nobody's drinking that. So it's just another trend that's come and gone, or fad, I should say, that's come and gone. Is it going away? No. There's still a lot of producers out there. There's small producers and large producers that are still making hard seltzers, but the market has matured and cooled off. One big reason, too, is that for a lot of consumers, when they go out to a restaurant and bar, they're less likely to get a hard seltzer because they want to trade up to something else. Hard seltzer you have by the pool with your friends in the backyard, not when you're going out.
Exactly. Cheryl, also non-alcoholics. You talked about them. Big opportunity here.
Huge opportunity.
Tell me about it.
Guests are willing to spend as much money for a creative non-alcoholic drink as they are for a glass of wine.
$12 to $18.
Oh,
serious?
Of course.
Okay.
Yes. Because we as consumers are very conscious about the amount of alcohol that we're drinking, and we are drinking less.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
And so having that great tasting non-alcoholic drink that is not soda, not just juice and seltzer, and tasting really, really good so that they can participate in the event, right? In the dining event is really great. And they're doing it in Europe. They're really creative drinks coming out of Europe. The US is a little bit slower to adopt, but people will spend money on non-alcoholics. For example, Lyre's, a company out of Australia, has come up with non-alcoholic cocktails in a can. So again, thinking about if you're struggling on developing that non-alcoholic, boom, you have a can. You can, again, do some fun garnish with it, and it's really, really tasty. There are producers like Bar Hill in Vermont. They have some beautiful ginger syrups, and that you could do a non-alcoholic cocktail, and then you could almost do an upcharge for adding alcohol to it. But it's something that's really exciting is about garnish. So, Doug, what do you think about garnishing non-alcoholics?
So I think you should garnish them just like your cocktails. We had dinner at one of the top restaurants in Rome, and they had a non-alcoholic pairing menu to go with their tasting menu that multiple people were enjoying. And we're talking about a Michelin-starred restaurant in Rome with the non-alcoholic pairing menu. And they're quite successful. The other thing, I think it helps to bring out creativity for your staff, for your bartenders. And that's why please do more than just mint or a slice of orange. Think much, much, much bigger than that. What is the type? What is the cut of the orange? Does the mint fit? There's different types of sugars or things of that nature that you can utilize to garnish your drink, because that just goes with the experience.
We just hit viewer Will's question, who was asking how important is non-alcoholic mixology. Then I think there was a follow-up from the same Will who says, as a consumer, I get discouraged when I go into a brew pub and they have 30 beers on tap and 26 are IPAs. We've talked about the IPA thing, but this also brings up something else. Operationally, and we didn't mention it, it's pretty obvious, but carrying less inventory is kind of critical here. You got to do more with less, even when you're talking about, kicking up your mixology profile.
Yes.
Yeah.
Your inventory, your carrying costs, that's money that's just sitting there that you've paid for.
Yeah.
And you got to turn it over. And so dialing into what do you need? What are your par stocks that you need? Do you have a par of 5 cases? That's a lot of bottles, 12 bottles a case. Do you only need a par of 1 case? That's 12 bottles to then initiate the next purchase.
Right. You're ordering every Tuesday anyway, right?
Exactly. And being smart too about when in the month. If you have historical sales data, use it.
Oh, yeah. We're awash in data. I mean, that's one of the most critical things that will inform most of these decisions here.
Mm-hmm. And I was going to say, it's hard. I've managed bars and you get that ego in the way. I'm like, well, we can carry that. That'd be fun to carry. What if we add that? It's hard because you want to carry. Again, you cannot carry everything. And if you're not moving the product, who is that doing anything? And that's where you have to be careful of your own ego and really looking at the financial stability of the restaurant and also what the guest is looking for.
I'm going to go to a viewer question. Luis is lamenting the apparent decline of gin and its availability. Maybe you can set me straight. Have gins and the massive varieties of brands on bar menus finally gone out of style? Is this a thing, or people still drinking gin as much as ever?
Depends on the market. Go to Spain, they drink a lot of gin and tonics.
Why? Really?
It's a big thing. It was started by the chefs in Barcelona,
Yeah.
and it's just taken off, and you're starting to see that bleed over in the United States, where some markets, gin and tonics are a thing. Fun, creative, multiple different types of garnishes, fruits, herbs, things of that nature.
Yeah.
Where in some markets, some people perceive gin as an old person's drink.
Yes.
This is what my parents drank.
Sure.
And I don't want to do what they did, which is always a generational thing.
Yes.
So you see both sides of the spectrum.
So I'm a seasonal drinker. Gin and tonics are gone. Now that the nights are getting down to 50 Fahrenheit and so on. What are we drinking this fall? What do you look forward to as the weather starts to chill up? We're in New York State here. We have a global audience, people all over the planet. But for us, lucky us, we get to enjoy the seasons quite a bit. Things are cooling down. What's your go-to?
Oh, that's hard. I right now love white port.
Oh, yeah?
Doing white port and tonic. Again, something super easy, flavorful, delicious. You can do a simple citrus garnish or make something a little bit more fancy on it. There's also canned white port and tonics if you don't want to buy it yourself. Yes, we're getting into the fall. So for wine, red grape varieties, Southern
Sure.
Italian, Sicily right now is hot.
Yes.
Incredibly hot, but looking at some really cool wines from Puglia, like Susamaniello,
Yeah.
Primitivo, of course, but then also fun hybrids from
Yeah.
the U.S. There's some killer hybrids that are out there in the United States that are drinking really well and would be that kind of mid-fall.
I love that. White ports. There's going to be some follow-ups texting after this. All right, Doug, what are you into?
Get ready, people. It's time for pumpkin.
What?
Pumpkin every which way. And people say I'm tired of pumpkin, but sales data showing that people are still attracted to pumpkin in our food, in our beverages, hot drinks such as coffees, cold drinks, beer, things of that nature. It is the season of pumpkin. Also, even though technically it's not maple syrup season, because maple syrup's a spring thing,
Yes.
people still think about that maple syrup in the fall, moving into the winter. And also, here in New York, it's cider season. Fresh, locally made cider from a farm stand somewhere. I drink cider by the gallon this coming into the season.
Yeah.
So that's something that I look forward to.
Perfect. Thank you for that seasonal advice. And thank you, viewers, for checking in. This has been a lovely conversation. Thank you for coming back into the studio.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, you bet. And I should note that this is going to be released in a podcast in a week or two. So heads up for that. If you haven't checked out our podcast, it's Cornell Keynotes, the podcast. We'll share either a QR code or a URL in the chat so you can check those out. If you like what you hear, please subscribe. Thanks, viewers. We'll see you next time on Cornell Keynotes. Bye-bye.